So initially we were planning to stay here all night, answer questions for as long as you guys wanted, but apparently we only have the space for an hour. So we're just going to we're going to jump to Q&A afterwards. If there are more questions, if there's things we haven't answered, I at least maybe just stand outside. I'm happy to, until they kick me out of the building, just answer questions. That's what we're here for.
James.
That's God.
And Dan is not here, though he says hello. Dan Floyd is not here. You can't hear his tiny high-pitched voice. I will not disclose whether or not that's actually his voice.
That's actually his voice.
And also, I need to give a hello from our newest artist, Scott DeWitt. You guys should check out this band. It's called Fanboys. It's really funny.
And now I want us to send out a last hello to all you guys. She was really sad to have to leave the show, but her work schedule has just been overwhelming since she moved to a new company, and hopefully someday she's not in a crunch and can come back to us.
We love Allison!
Yeah. I really do. If any of you guys have video of this and want to send it to me, I would love to just send that moment to Allison at some point.
Done.
But perfect. Great. You guys are awesome. You think we'd have some planning and have our own video now? Yes, there's a mic there.
There's a mic here?
And there's a human
And there's a
being
human
with a mic
there. His name is Dan, but he's not our dad.
I think he's a robot.
Although anytime that you want me for half an
green shirt,
hour.
actually. I just noticed how appropriate that is.
Yeah, the tie.
Yeah, I know. You can totally pick to his Dan.
So,
The other Dan.
yeah, if you have anything at all to ask, just start filing down. Feel free to grab this, grab that one, and we'll just start answering questions, probably tangent into whatever we want to talk about.
Yeah.
Alright, yes, it's you. Yeah, absolutely.
So, I want to know, how big are they?
Pretty big.
Yeah.
What?
Yeah, we'll alternate back and forth, I guess.
Before I ask my question, I just want to thank you guys and your team for all you've done. I think we all love games for what they are, but you guys shown love for games for what they can also be.
Well, and I mean, so does everyone for just being here, right? Like, the amazing thing to me about coming to this PAX is just seeing how many people want to push this forward, how many people want to see games be more. And so this has been incredible for me too.
You've approached a lot of controversial subjects, and I've been doing it more and more recently. I've noticed this, which I really appreciate. It allows us as gamers to use it as a medium for education at a higher level, as in, I wasn't willing to deal with this subject, but because of this game, I am now. I know I'm kind of asking for some previews, but what are other topics that you are considering, but at the same time you're like, you're not too sure about it yet?
So, the one that I've been working on for a while that I keep tearing up, okay, so there's a ton actually. I destroy every episode like 8 times before it comes out. Let's see. So, one I'm working on is about trash talking, because I feel like it's pervasive in some aspects of the community, and I keep hearing it's just part of the community, it's just part of the game, and it's not. I mean, my short answer is, right, like if you have to trash talk to get somebody on tilt to beat them in a game, you're just not good enough to beat them without doing so, right? The other one is that we've done a lot of discussion of women and women in gaming, and I mean, that is a thing that needs to be covered over and over again, but I do also feel like there are some issues, there are some burdens, some ways that we target, especially a young male audience, that may not be that healthy for young men either. And nobody ever talks about the sort of competitive pressures that we put on young men trying to figure out the world, living in your sort of high school hierarchical environment. And so that's one that I've been writing as well. And we'll see how that goes over. That's as much preview as you get, sir.
All right, so I think you did an episode on this, conversation-based games, and not making it the kind of BioWare dialogue meal. Do you think that we're going to get to a point where we can sort of simulate conversation with someone that feels like a real human being soonish? And the reason I ask this is because this seems to be the goal of Bioshock Infinite, creating someone that feels as human as possible in the character of Elizabeth. So,
Lily, all you.
I haven't played Bioshock. Is that even out?
It's not out. It's not out.
Is that
I
one?
was drinking sea while it's out.
Oh, yeah, you said that.
So, my short answer
Wait, I
is...
thought I had this one.
Do you? Drop.
Here, drop this mic.
So yeah, now that I've bought you some time to think, I think it's really good.
What was the question?
So, have you seen Prom Night and Facade? These are like not huge games, so small indie games that they were trying to do sort of algorithmic conversation trees to have a much more real-world dialogue situation. We're sort of ish there. It's not going to be in the near future. I think there's a lot more focus on this that we need to do in order to actually deliver a more human conversation. There are a lot of tricks we can pull to fool you in the short run, and I think there are certain mediums for it that are much more viable. Did you play Catherine at all?
I have played Catherine.
So you know the texting in it? I think that environment is a perfect place because you have these short, truncated sentences, because to have a more holistic conversation, to be able to choose each little phrase than your BioWare sort of, here's 2 words, let's see what that represents. But no, unfortunately, I mean, the Turing test is have a conversation with a machine, don't know it's a machine, right? Once we get there, we enter a very scary realm, but we're not going to be there in the short term, I don't think, unfortunately. But we are getting much more human actors just by understanding what feels human, right? Like how we can have these characters do small things, right? The guard who you see sipping his coffee, right? Playing chess with his friend before you sneak in. Rather than simply thinking of them as game pieces. And so as designers, or if you guys want to be designers, just even being conscious of those little touches, I think will make it feel much more human, but as far as having a really human dialogue, we're not quite there.
So I was in your talk earlier today, the Ready Player one, and I've actually been waiting to ask this since then. But
Oh, right.
It's just as relevant. About 2 years ago, my family was in a car accident. My brother lost a lot of motor function. And so you guys were talking, you and a couple of the other panelists were talking about how games are improving, like the just mechanical skills of like surgeons and stuff like that. And I was wondering, this is sort of for my brother, sort of for the developers in the room, but are there any games that you could see that are sort of geared towards, or at least could be used as like a leveling up for my brother's motor functions or people like him? And in addition, like as developers, what can we do to like sort of make games that are geared in that direction?
So it's too bad. My first panel at this PAX was called Designers Doing Good, and it was about specifically targeting different accessibility needs and what we can do for different groups. I don't know of any game specifically designed, certainly not any mass market game specifically designed to improve motor function in that sense. I wish I had a better answer for you, but I think it's something that, these are the sort of things that we need to be cognizant of. These are the burdens of your generation as designers, right? Finding all the other things that we can do. It's an area that I do think we can help. I know that there's a lot of talk about at least accessibility right now. I don't know if he's seen the site Able Gamers, or if when we were talking, as we start thinking through these problems, as we start allowing more customizations, we start allowing people to find alternate ways to play. And so I think that we're getting there, especially for allowing people to play games, but in terms of gradual motor function increase, that's not something that I have off the top of my head. Mail us at our Extra Creditz and just remind me that you asked this question, and I'll look into it a little bit. And I'll talk to some people who I know who are doing more work in the serious game side than I am, and maybe they know some medical stuff.
Awesome, thank you.
Okay, so this last question, more a game theory idea I've had.
All right.
That I want some feedback on. You've used the analogy before that video games aren't a completed work of art unto themselves, that you need the player to play it, they're the storyteller. I don't think that's an especially good analogy. I think, yeah.
We measured it, found one.
I think a better analogy would be that video games are a composition, whereas the players are the performers. Or like, the video game is like a theater script, and the players are the ones going on stage. Or a video game is like a recipe, and the player is the cook making it. You know, a composition is a completed work of art unto itself, whether it's being performed or not.
So I would never presume to tell anyone how to conceptualize design, right? Like I try and get through the show to tell you guys how I conceptualize design. And if it's a more useful way for you to look at it in your development, I think totally go for it, right? Like if that sort of framework helps you design, I think there's nothing wrong with it, right? For me, it's just an awareness of the player's role that's important, because very often I see people who think they're only designing the thing on the screen, right? And that's not the whole experience. And so any way that helps you frame it, are we feeding back?
Something.
Oh, wow.
Dog whistle.
Oh, fantastic. Right. So, yeah, any way that helps you figure out how to work through your design problems with the player in mind, I think is great. And so we should have a long conversation about the difference between those two outlooks and what they do to design. If you want to grab me after, I'm happy to go over that. But fundamentally, I mean, I don't think there is one right way to look at design.
Okay. It was just an idea.
Yeah, no, absolutely.
All right. Thank you.
Thank you.
Well, over the years, movie-based games have really been not great at all. So I've been wondering, do you have any ideas how to improve movie-based games other than delaying them past when the movie comes out?
Well, no, because I just remember, this was a few years ago, this was when Tron was coming out, Tron Legacy, and I talked to one of the developers that worked on it at Penumbra, which I believe, or was it Penumbra? I don't remember, but I know they were shutting down, that's all I know. Shortly after this game was released, the Tron Legacy game, and he was like, yeah, we didn't get the script for Tron Legacy until halfway through production. They had no idea what the movie was about. They just knew what it looked like, because Disney wouldn't give them the rights to the script. So I'm gonna guess that stuff like that happens a lot with movie games, and that might have something to do with why they're so ill-informed. But I don't believe that's the only formula. Like, I don't know how I would handle a movie game.
In my opinion, the best film games tend to be based on the IP, right? The general idea of the film, rather than the script. Right. If you try and deliver the experience of the movie will always be a better movie than your game will be, right? That's the medium it was designed to be delivered in. And so the problem is that you see that as what people try and deliver in your movie-based games a lot. The best ones, like the Transformers game, I think it was 2 years ago now, or Batman, right? The new Batmans, right? Came out roughly sort of in that period of our awesome new set of Batman films. Nothing to do with them. Were great games in their own right? Because they understood, they took the IP, they took the image, they understood what made that character and that world resonant and the mechanics that that world had, and delivered on that. So if you were ever faced with working on a movie-based game, that would be my thoughts. Unfortunately, there's a production reality that very often movie studios don't fully know that and demand that they follow the script. So.
Yeah, we always were just upset we didn't get a light cycle game, and that was it.
In however many years Angry Birds has been out so far, I still have yet to understand its appeal. Could you possibly have any insight as to why it has millions of players?
I have some complaints. I think I made a mistake.
You're asking me. I don't really have much insight, honestly. I'm just nervous.
Not allowed.
No, I like Angry Birds. I like Space Angry Birds more, which I like to call some Angry Birds.
There you go. Lily, tastemaker. She likes it. The world likes it. So really quick, it's actually it's one of the few ones that I have this discussion all the time with friends of mine who are designers, and a lot of these things, like, in our hubris we feel like we get, right? Like, Farmville makes total sense to me, right? Like, Call of Duty, I believe I've got a good handle on that one. It's been a rough night. So, this is one that stumps everybody I know. Like, I've had probably 20 plus hours of discussions with designers trying to argue in circles about why Angry Birds and not one of the other games which is very similar to Angry Birds. When they were launching, they got a little bit lucky in terms of Quiet Week. They have a good, approachable art style, they have an easy mechanic, but there were plenty of other games with that mechanic before that game, right? And once it started to take off, they were really, really on top of it in terms of continuing to push it, continuing to market it, making sure that they were really following their metrics and understanding where they needed to deploy their resources in order to continue to drive it. So they were really good once it started to grow. I hate giving the answer of it was a good game that got lucky as its outset, but I haven't gotten to a better answer on that one. So I'm sorry.
I know also, they gave a talk at my school a while ago, and the Rovio guys, and I know that they did a lot of marketing in Finland first, and they got their numbers up there, and then brought it up to the App Store in the States. And because they had more numbers, they were able to get on higher lists in the App Store, and that was part of their trick of just getting seen a lot more. So I know that had some. As far as I actually haven't really heard anybody describe it as an addictive game, though. Compelling, I guess. Like Farmville.
It's not, right? Because it doesn't have the Skinner box stuff.
Yeah,
It's not the right engagement cycle that you can play in 2 minutes, right?
Yeah, you can pick it up and put it down.
I'm just amazed they got a TV show game in it, right? I hope that's public knowledge.
The trailer looks so bad.
It's late, it's packed, totally a break like 7 NDA. Yeah, sorry, that's the best I got. Thank you very much.
Hi, I'm sure you've answered this question before, but what inspired the initial creation of Extra Creditz?
All right.
Answering this about Dan. You know more about this than I do.
Yeah, but I've told this.
Okay, well I know this story.
All right.
Not a very long story.
But it's going to make it longer by interrupting you.
Yeah, I know. Are you guys excited? Dan had a presentation project to give, and he was doing it on sex and games, I believe.
Of course.
I think. Yeah. So he had an oral presentation to give, but
Too easy. Where's the popcorn?
If someone can just like put a track underneath that and put that on loop on YouTube.
It's happening. 12-hour loop. Bike.
This is not live stream.
So he had to give a presentation, and he didn't want to do it, like actually have a presentation to give, so he made a little cartoon, and he based it off of one of James's articles, where, I don't know where you got the articles that you're writing for.
Well, it was either Chemistry or Edge. I was writing for a bunch of industry-facing stuff about how to push the meme, but stuff that was only read by other designers and developers, people working in the industry.
Yeah, so he used James's work, and then use it in his little presentation, and I think the reason why it's high pitched was because there was like a 10-minute cutoff, and it was just too long, and instead of cutting out 12 minutes, he actually just shortened it, and as a result, the tuning of the voice got higher.
So the important part about this story, is he's in college. When did college project get done? It's 3 a.m. And that's why the voice is what it is.
But he got in contact with James to ask how to pronounce his last name, right?
Yes.
Yeah, and so you took interest in this when you heard that he was making it, to show it to me when he gets done. And then you wanted a way to reach out to people, and you thought this was pretty cool, so you started putting them on YouTube, and then it got some of the newspapers and stuff.
Here we are. I was sitting at Activision, I was having lunch, I remember getting his email, and I had been looking, because I've been writing all this stuff that was all just read by other people in the industry, and I've been looking forever, because I'd been hammering on everybody, I'd been like, you know guys, we should probably talk to the people who buy our games.
No.
And I was looking for a way, but like, I hadn't figured out a way yet, and then he sent me the first video. It's like, that's it. And then a couple weeks later, he asked me if he could use another one, because the first video was fairly popular. They posted on Kotaku and stuff like that. I was of course like, sure, yeah, absolutely. And then he asked one more time, I was like, how about I just write stuff for you?
And then you hooked in Allison at some point.
Yeah, when we got to The Escapist, we had to do one a week, and as Lee will gladly tell you, that's impossible. Allison is a machine. The first company I started, Allison was one of our artists, and I have never seen anybody do the amount of just like raw, awesome art that flows out of Allison.
If you haven't seen her actual work, go look at it. It's amazing.
Yeah, and the amount that she just would do in a day was like, I just couldn't believe it. So I was like, there's only one person we can get to do this, and that's how she got on. And then between her arm and her getting, I guess they're kind of defunct, so I could probably talk about it. She was on the Working for Camo and with THQ, right? Starstars guys, and kind of all know what happened to that, right? And so between her losing her job there, having to search for a new job, having to like really want to leave an impression at this new job, so she didn't have to search for another one soon. We needed some help.
Well, first you got a lot of guest artists, and then me, and then I was a guest artist, and then you were like, hey, you want to be a second artist. I want to be a second artist on Extra Creditz, and then I did. And then I eventually had to go, sadly, like you said already. And we brought on Scott DeWitt, and that's where we are.
Yeah. Okay, thank you.
That's a long-winded answer.
Hi, James. Hey. So, a while ago, a few years back, actually, you guys did... Oh, I'm a terrible person. I'm a terrible person. I'm just terrible with names. I'm trying to cover it. It's all right. So, a few years back, you guys did a episode about gaming Oscars. And so since then, I've noticed the VGAs have changed a lot, hopefully for the better, and the DICE have gotten a ton more publicity. Like that whole talk they had earlier today. So, I mean, with all these changes, like, do you think this is like at least improving like the state of video games to the public appearance?
I do think so. I think that the VGAs have a fair amount more work to do. I'll just put it that way. I think that the DICE Awards are always quite good. I think that some of the things the developer awards given away at GDC are usually quite good, and also a lot of the festivals are getting a lot more recognition, right? Like clearly this is getting a ton of news coverage, but even stuff like IGF, IGC, and so I do think that it's helping move this image. We got a lot of work left to do, but I do think it's making a difference.
Do you think they've, sorry to keep dragging on, but do you think they've solved the award categories issue, or does that still have work to do across the board?
I think there's some work to be done, at least in terms of how people are selected for awards, because especially a lot of the industry awards, they're selected by developers. The people with the biggest studio very often end up with awards, or let's say a Sony game is up for an award. There is an inter-office email saying, hey, everyone who works at Sony, just to let you know, please be voting for this. And so there's still in some of these award ceremonies, games chosen that may not be exactly what we all agree on for those reasons. So there's still work to be done. We are doing better on some of the categories. I haven't seen a hottest new trailer category in a while, which I'm happy. Let's advertise at you for 10 minutes a category. So yeah, I think it's improving. I still think we've got work to do.
Yeah, we're talking about it's you. It's not me. I'll take the blame for this. I'm just taking the credit from downstairs.
So, we're gonna talk about that.
Okay.
Okay, good.
As somebody who comes from the board game world of playing and design, do you know is there a lot of interaction between the two worlds? Do you think there's something we can learn from either side, or are they very different and very opposed?
No, there's a great deal. Board games are probably one of the best tools to learn about design, because in a video game, right, like everything's under the hood. You don't see the physics system, you don't see how all this stuff works. But in board games, right, rules are translated directly into experiences. You can see how rules create experience. In terms of actual dialogue between our two industries, there's getting to be more, especially as board games are becoming popular on XBLA and more so on the iPad. But they are different. We go to different conventions, we have different events, right? Like, there's not as much communication as one would like. I'm totally, whatever your question is, I'm not answering it, she's answering it.
Hi, James. Anyone can answer it. It's an open.
All right, you.
So, James.
I hear it next.
Oh, I broke the stand.
You had one job.
Enforcer.
I'm not going to be allowed into one.
Just real quick, by the way, before, can we get a round of applause for the enforcers?
Ken Levine's talk about Bioshock and companion characters and companion AI. And he seems that he has his philosophy is that everything that the game does is subservient to the player. Like the narrative is always subservient to the player's desires. And that kind of, that kind of, I'm not going to say rankled, but it didn't stick with me, I guess. Like, do you think that the artistic vision found in like books and other previous non-interactive media is valid in something like video games?
I see what you're doing. This is a landmine where he wants one of us to mention Mass Effect.
It's a good game.
What are your opinions on this stupid little kid? So, getting back to Ken.
Actually, you want to talk to me about the ending of Mass Effect 3, you'll do it when I'm not in front of the mic.
And then we're gonna do a episode on child characters because the Walking Dead opened my eyes in terms of how to approach child characters in games. But back to Ken Lee.
So sorry, I got distracted from that. What was your original question?
Do you think that the artistic vision that's found, that's like a concrete block that's found in non-interactive media, can be translated and still be intact in video games?
I think so, yeah. I try to think of examples, but I'm just completely drawing a blank.
2033.
What?
That's for 2033. It started out as a book.
Yes. So did The Witcher. So did a lot of things.
But really, it was about characters. Like Elizabeth is supposed to, one thing that she's like looking at it. She's looking at like a painting on the wall, and you're going over being, the player character psychopath, and she'll just like stop and go to you, and that seems to be lacking in an internal consistency of her character, and that she's just like switching to whatever you're doing.
Well, it is a hard balance. Ken specifically has a very adamant outlook in terms of play first, and I don't disagree with it. But I think there are ways to make it feel more holistic there are lots of ways that we can direct the player to be very unlikely to encounter a situation that would sort of kick down the fourth wall, right? And make you very aware of the gaminess of your experience. And so, do I think that the player's desires come first? I think yes, but I think that gives us a brilliant opportunity to force the player to then reflect on their own desires, right? And so I would use that interactivity to force introspection, right? And you know what? Like Ken does it all the time, right? Bioshock, right? You want to be doing other things during A Man Chooses, A Slave Obeys, right? And he was like, no, not doing it. And it points out, right, by having given you that freedom all along, now we can point out the way that freedom means. So I think it's a very roundabout way to answer your question. I think there's a lot we can do. I think that forcing the player to play the way you want them to is not the correct answer, but the more that you understand how your game is played, the more you watch players play your game, the more you understand psychologically what it means when they do various actions, what they want those to represent, and you can respond within the game, right? And then there are cases where you can bend those rules, right? There are no hard and fast rules in game design. So that was my circuitous answer to a very short question. But yes, go.
Okay, so I'm going to have to apologize in advance because I'm going to ask a question specifically only for James.
All right.
And I have an explanation for this. On Friday, during the Designing to Do Good panel, I had talked to you before and after, and was specifically asking about tips for applying to game design school, specifically DigiPen, and you wanted me to ask this question in front of the Extra Creditz panel, to sort of answer for everyone. So
this is awesome. Yeah, so I get this question a lot, not only for DigiPen, but for game schools in general. And how many of you guys are going to or are looking to go to a game school, game education? Yeah, so there's enough people in here. I mean, that's why we did that whole episode on it. Do be very careful. A lot of them are, in my opinion, criminal. I'm sure I'm going to get in total trouble for saying that, but there are a lot of ones that will take $100,000 from you, leave you $100,000 in debt, and give you a piece of paper that means nothing, and no skills that will get you a job in this industry. Luckily, DigiPen is not that. The reason that I work there is because I think that it is one of a handful of schools in this country doing, trying to figure out how we teach things like design, right? And they're phenomenal at programming, good at art. But in terms of what you need to apply, if specifically for design, you need to have shown interest in game design. We want to know about the games you've made, right? Because by the time that you're applying to game school, there's all sorts of things, right? Like, man, when I was much younger, I've been making D&D maps, I've been making my own rule sets for RPGs, right? Like I made card games, and so all this stuff, right? All these ways that show that you're trying to do stuff with design. Mods are a great example. If you don't get that, at least we ask you how many games you played, right? And all the time we get people who had just, right, like Halo and Call of Duty, right? Those are their two answers. As a designer, you need more breadth than that before we can even begin to teach you. And so everything, right? Like we want to see everything you've ever, like we want to see the most obscure things, everything that you can rack your brain for, right? Because we actually want to see all that. Be careful in your essays, right? Like think of your application in the same way that you would design a game, right? Like everything is design. This application you're sending in is an experience you're crafting for another human being. And think about how they'll respond to each of these things, right? Careful in the essays because we're looking for you not following instructions, we're looking for a lax attitude. But I mean, we're also looking very much for creativity, for your ability to think outside the box. Other tips on how to apply to game schools. There are a lot of game schools that will accept you regardless of what you send. You should look up, I mean, DigiPen Lab lists like average GPA and that sort of thing on their website. Make sure you're somewhere in that ballpark. And for me, right, I went to Carnegie Mellon's Entertainment Technology Center. When I went to the ETC, I found out about it late. I actually found out over a game of Settlers of Catan with a buddy of mine who had gone to Carnegie Mellon for other things. I took my undergrad in classics, and when I was going to Carnegie Mellon and applying, I didn't have time to take the GREs. I didn't have time to take the MCAT. I didn't have time to take any of the actual applicable master's exams. I had taken the LSATs, right? So I sent them my LSAT scores. I also sent them, I'd been touring in a band, right? So I sent them a CD of, I sent them a box. I actually sent them an entire box. I sent them my LSAT scores, a CD that we had done. I sent them press and promo stuff I had done. I sent them a game manual I had written, right, for a game that didn't exist. I actually spent a bunch of time from the day, 1 week, getting all this stuff, getting all this stuff together, building things like the rest of that game manual. It was unfinished at the time. Samples of writing I had gotten published. And I sent them this box, right, that had nothing to do with their entrance requirements. And I told myself that if they got it, if they understood why all this stuff was relevant to game design, it was a place for me to go, right? And they did. So I think just demonstrating all the reasons why you are a unique individual who has a unique perspective on how to
Sexy hair.
We're done. We still got light.
Candle Jack.
Yeah. So now I'm just going to start telling scary stories. But so that's pretty much it, right? Like anything that can really demonstrate why you have a unique perspective and thought thoroughly about design is what we're looking for. So I hope that was some help.
I also want to give my
Oh yeah, you should.
because I went to game design school actually for a year. Yeah, you should. be wary of, if you're going for art, make sure you're not going to a school that's going to just talk you into saying, yeah, we totally have an art program for game design students, and then they don't. Because that's what I found out when I went to game design school.
And
be wary of schools trying to talk you into going to their school because they get a commission and they take you first come, first serve. Like, look for accredited schools that will give you actual degrees, not just little diplomas. Because that kind of is what happened to me. If you follow me on Twitter, you probably see me getting a little angry at my tuition every once in a while. Yeah, but I fell into the trap of, I was interested in doing, I mean, I don't regret it at all because obviously being able to go to the location that I went to, like, opened up a lot of opportunities and I got a lot of connections, so it was great. As far as the education, it was not really good for what I wanted to do. So do your research and making sure that if you want to do art, like I know DigiPen has an actual like game art program.
And
right?
yeah, one other,
and then there's also like a program, a design program.
One quick thing I run into all the time, and we actually get lots of people at DigiPen. If you want to be an artist, and oh, you guys probably know this just from watching the show, but like a game designer, it does not do art, right? Like we don't actually generate the pictures. And we get all sorts of people who, when they see game designer, think that that's sort of drawing the characters, right? And those roles fall under the art category. So if what you want to do is create art, like make sure you're applying to the art programs at these various schools rather than the game design program, because you'll find yourself spending a very unhappy year doing game design before you figure out you should be in a different program. It happens all the time. But thanks for coming up and asking. Like, it's awesome.
Thank you very much.
Hello.
Hey.
I have a question. It's a bit of a hot button topic. What is your opinion on the sale of M-rated games to people who are under the age that those games are meant for? Because there's some incredible game stories that were told in games that were rated M for various reasons. So, like, with the proper parental support being there to explain it, like, what's your opinion on it, basically?
I played M-rated games way long before I was 18, so, yeah.
With the caveat of proper parental support, I think there's absolutely no question in my mind that, like, whatever, we shouldn't, it's not an area that we should be legislating about. I think that there is, so I lived through the stupid music labeling, right, and like, screw that. Fundamentally, I think that we as a culture need to be more informative. I wish that at the places that you went to go purchase games, there was some more communication about exactly what you're getting in them. But I think restricting people's access to any form of information is, it's really hard to argue for me to argue for it, right? Like I can't do it. Like I think that minors, like by the time you're 14, you can think through a lot of these problems, right? By the time you're 12, you probably can, right? Like we do too much treating children like
talking down to children.
Yeah, rather than thinking of them as adults with less experience, right?
Thank you for finally saying that. I've been saying that for years.
Yeah, and like, yeah, so.
Yeah, I when I was a kid, I definitely had violent games and stuff like that. The thing is that I always had a parent that was supportive and making sure I was okay playing these games. Like if they ever felt like something was uncomfortable, which was really rare, they would step in. And it was really, I think, only with Grand Theft Auto because my cousin had it, and I was like, there was a hooker, and my mom's like, no, not that. But. Yeah, I don't know, it's just, I have a lot of really good trust with my parents, so it wasn't, I never had problems with that. I was playing games, like I said before, and that's what I mean, like, there was an understanding that I could handle these subjects when I was younger than what the box said I should be. But then again, I know there's some people who can't as well. But it's so hard to judge on that because you can't be everybody's parent. A box can't be everybody's parent. It's just easier to say that. Yeah. Like I.
Yeah. This is something that maybe we should put in an episode at some point.
And I mean, I used to work at a GameStop, and we did the
GameStop solidarity.
we did this game is rated up for mature for blood, gore, violence, and sex and drugs and blah whatever. And parents were like, yeah, okay. Like, they don't care. They just don't realize it. Or there was like 1 or 2 parents that were just like, no, I can't let my kids see that. So.
Except for dildos and Saints Row.
Yeah, I don't know. I think I just said like boxes shouldn't be your parents. Parents should be.
So we've only got 7 more minutes.
Yeah.
Real quick, I want to make sure we get to as many people as we can, but how many of you guys want to start up or hope to run a small indie studio at some point? We had a bunch of you guys. I swear I thought I saw the audience. Was there, did any of the guys from 9 Dots here? 9 Dots? Oh, I saw you earlier. Come down. I want, really quick, I wanted you guys to tell your story and talk a little bit about starting a indie studio and like trials and tribulations, because I think this is important, and like I think this is one of the more important things we can deliver.
Alright, so first of all, I have a French accent, I know, so I might be searching my words or anything. Anyway, the first thing I want to say is the working conditions in the game industry is a real problem, and I wanted to like make a difference. And the one thing that I realized with a lot of indie studios is that sometimes they don't know why they are starting. They just want to make games, they just don't know how to start or how to really make what they want possible. And they just think about the game themselves, but not about the fact that they are starting a business and they are building a team and they are trying to make something that can change the life of anyone participating in it. So here's my story. I worked at Activision for 3.5 years in a QA. I was just done doing a game design degree when I got a tester job. And since the QA department was quite new, I just got to like ramp up pretty quick in responsibilities, and I got a good enough budget to like pile up money, and I just decided that I'd rather make my own games than test the games of other people, especially for a company that I was not necessarily like resonant with. Like Activision is not exactly doing what I think the industry would be doing, and I'm sure that everybody in this room does. Think like that as well. So yeah, I had $25,000 piled up. I decided to start on my own, and I started recruiting people. And the reason why I could find people was because I could tell them more than you should work on my game, it's going to be great. So I started with the idea that we shouldn't be doing any kind of crunch. I started with the idea that we should work on our own intellectual property, because why would you do your best for the project of someone else if you're doing some servicing work and like working for, I don't know, Nickelodeon or stuff like that? They don't even care about games, so why should you care about what you do for them? Like, no matter the quality you're going to reach, as long as they got a fun product, it's going to be fine by them. And when you do your own games, good enough is never good enough, right? And by combining these factors, like thinking that you need a sane working environment, that you need to work on the projects you want, that you can't have a creative input, I could gather up one of the most talented teams that I could ever imagine. And we've been working on this for 2 years now, and we've been doing it without salary all that time, full time. We've got the first product out, which is good by some, not good by others. That's fine. I'm not necessarily implying that we can make games that anybody can enjoy, but we can deliver on the promise that you can have sane working development environment, and that you can like really reach a high production value product. So this is what I would recommend to anyone who wants to start a studio. Have a vision that goes beyond the game you want to make. It's not about just you and your own project. Making something that really go grab people and make them believe in your project.
And what's been the hardest struggles for you?
We always think that there are resources to help you financially, and that's bullshit. So, like, especially in Quebec, like, we were always told, oh yeah, right, you're in Quebec, it's gonna be easy, it's gonna like get factories and stuff like that. But as long as you don't start paying people, you don't start getting financial help. But if you can start paying people to get your project done, you no longer need the help of others. So all that help just goes to like the big boys like Ubisoft and Beanos who just want that 37% tax credit on the people that they are already paying. It's not gonna create more jobs, it's just gonna sustain the ones that are already there.
And if I wanted to drag you up here, because if any of you guys have any questions about starting a studio, like I've been really impressed with their arc over the last 2 years, and I think that, I mean, if you have any personalized questions about how to do this, it's a struggle, right? Like I've done studios where I've raised a bunch of money, and I've done studios where we bootstrap from nothing, and it's really hard getting the word out there, getting people to know about you when there are other people with millions and millions of dollars for marketing budget. There are things you may be able to make a great game, right? Like I have students who make fantastic games, but know nothing about business, right? And find that guy who just wants to run his business, right? Who wants to answer email all day, who wants to get on the phone with the media outlets, who wants to do your taxes, right? Because if you're really going to run a game studio, unfortunately, it's more than just the art, right? Part of the art is the reality of creating that art.
I thought I'd be making game design all the time, but forget it. At first, I started with maybe half and half time, like half of the time doing administrative stuff and PR and marketing and like building up a strategy, and the other half doing game design. But the more you work on it, and the more it becomes like administrative role that takes up on everything, and that's okay because that makes it possible to like create projects. But your responsibilities, they do change, and you need to be aware of that and be prepared for that, and you need to want that because an indie studio is still a business, and if you don't think of it that way, you're just gonna increase your chances of not succeeding in delivering the things you want to people. Like you could maybe complete a great project, and maybe there will be literally no one that's gonna ever play it.
So I just randomly volunteered you. Are you okay hanging out for a little bit afterwards?
Sure thing.
Oh yeah, so maybe that's any question about indie studios. We probably have time for 2 more questions.
Alright, three.
We got 3 questions. Stay execution.
Just to make sure, the man over there is a good friend of mine. I'm gonna let him go first, just in case you guys go over.
You sir.
Thanks, Peter. You're awesome.
So basically, my question is, because I've been through a game design degree myself, and I've been thinking a lot about game design. My experience that brought up this question actually, well, I have kind of a rambling to, and I apologize for that. Basically, it's kind of in line with your comments about aggression and trash talking in games, because I'm wondering just how much a game designer should think about community design. I've never...
More than we do.
More than we... That is, yeah, that is a pretty good answer. But it's just because I can't really find many resources on community design, and what brought this on in my mind is the 7 years I've played on Final Fantasy XI, which featured like a really closely knit community where all of the really toxic people have just been naturally ejected from the game, which was kind of a business negative impact, but it was positive for the game's community as a whole, because the people were so closely knit that toxic players just had no room. And I'm comparing that with having just come back from the League of Legends panel about communities, where they have this gigantic community, and it's only now, like a year and a half ago that they started implementing measures to try and control the toxicity of their community. And I'm like, shouldn't they have, in a way, tried to implement systems more in the core of the game than having to patch them on later to try to restrain the toxicity?
So I'll try and rapid fire throw some stuff at you. Looking at the two is a difficult comparison because cooperative games, such as Final Fantasy XI, very different than competitive games. And especially when you're making competitive games, you have to be a lot more prepared for this. In the case of League of Legends, yes, absolutely, but you're right, there's very little out there. And in that particular case, right, they were a startup. And it's really hard. I mean, this is what we talk about with the trials of it actually being a business. When you are having to allocate that money, right, allocating it to community control measures for community that you don't know you'll ever get is a really hard sell internally in a lot of companies. And so that's why it always gets tacked on later. But yes, you're right. I mean, fundamentally, we just need to think about it a lot more than we ever have, and we're finally getting to that point. But all right, go.
All right, my question is a little, you might hate me for it, but what do you think will be the long-term ramifications on the industry and the community about how Mass Effect, the whole thing just went on? Not a question about the ending, but how everything got affected in the long run. Because some people said it's taking gaming back years, but I don't necessarily agree with that. I'm just wondering what your opinion is of what will happen in the long term.
All I know is that I was upset with how the fan reaction was with Mass Effect 3, because I can see what they mean by gamers have been spending so much time trying to defend games as art, and I feel like the ending of Mass Effect 3 was a really good chance for gamers to have that, and they just proved they weren't ready for it. And that's why I think people are saying, where they're saying that it pushed games back. I don't know if I agree that it necessarily pushed games back, but I think that, along with a few other things, where it's just like pound on it, eat away at it. It's just, in the long term, I don't know what it's going to do. I can't really call that, but you make games.
Catch me after. I want to make sure we get one last one, and then we're done, and then we're going to immediately shift you out there so we don't block the next group of people coming in, but I will stand somewhere, and I'll try to answer every question I can. So go.
Hi. I was just wondering, since you guys cover pretty much everything from game addiction to sexuality in games to kind of abuse in games, was there ever any topic that was off limits? Was there something that you just said, no way, there's going to be way too much negative impact on this?
No. The nice thing is we all have day jobs. There are a lot of topics where we knew we were going to get a lot of blowback, there are a lot of things, but creating dialogue is important, in my opinion. And it's worth it, and we were never worried about ratings over having those conversations. And it's the kind of nice thing about working in the industry and doing this. So no, we actually long ago, and there were some controversial topics where the question came up whether or not we should do that, and we had that discussion and said we are never going to worry about ratings over doing a topic that needs to be discussed.
I think we're more concerned about just being prepared for the episode than doing the episode itself. So we want to make sure we have the facts right, and then nothing is ever off limits.
All right.
So I think
right up there.